What up, people? Welcome back to Athlete, another edition in our branding series, if you will, something near and dear to my heart, especially as a former athlete and, of course, the founder of Athlete. Today, we're going to be talking about branding like a pro. So, brand like a pro, owning your narrative after the game, reading that straight off the screen. And your personal brand is your new uniform. Now, let's take a minute just to really talk about what that means before I start clicking from slide to slide. So, after the game, it's no longer about what jersey you're wearing. It's no longer attached to winning a championship or setting a personal record, breaking a record, whether it be a university record, a franchise record, team record. It's not about the physical performance anymore, as it's attached to who you are and or what you represent. So now, moving into these spaces, we have to create these new ways of having purpose, these new ways of telling the story or embodying the story of exactly who we are. And that in all arenas and all genres is aligned with what is your brand. And it's another, I guess, collective way of asking yourself, who are you? What do you represent? And specifically for you and I, who are we and what are we outside of the uniform and outside of the game? So now let's go ahead and jump into it. So just know that when you're moving into these new spaces, that who you are and what your story is here to stay and evolve. And what that means is that who you are is not now somehow null and void or irrelevant all of a sudden. It's very much the fabric and the core of what makes you very special and very unique. And that part will never go away. Now we're looking for that next phase. Now we're looking for that next stage in your journey and how you now walk this new path with the tools and the skills that you currently have. And of course, some of us may have already experienced, our story following us and our reputation preceding us, if you will. So people may already know when you step into new spaces exactly who you are in terms of your athletic history or your athletic past. So whether you come from being on a big stage or bigger, larger university, or being at the professional level. It could even be at a Division 2 or Division 3 level, junior college level, etc., or even high school for those of you who may be tuning in who are transitioning out of varsity level sports. People may already know you very well for who you are and what you've accomplished, and that's always a positive thing. And one thing to remember about this specific part of your brand as a former athlete or near future former athlete is that your brand will determine things like your opportunities, how people perceive you, and sometimes that can be a double-edged sword. Unfortunately, yet fortunately in most cases, and in later workshops, we'll talk about how to leverage that. But it also has a really unique dynamic as far as like your influence, like how you can influence the room, how you can influence decision making, how you can influence different conversations, certain conversations to your benefit, you may get to have because of your athletic background or who you are aligned with due to that, right? And also your leadership presence. And even for those athletes who didn't really see themselves as a leader or as a team captain or as someone leading the charge in their specific sport, maybe you saw yourself as a role player, or maybe you were a utility person, or maybe you were coming off the bench, if you will, but we're still an intricate part of the team. Maybe people will still automatically assume that you have leadership traits and that you have a leadership presence about yourself, whether it is aesthetically, how you look, it could be how you talk, it could be how you go about collecting information, the types of questions that you ask, the things that you require clarity on. All of those things are ingrained into the fabric of who you've been as an athlete, even if you didn't have a specific leadership role as an athlete in your specific sport. So the crazy part is that all of these things are just kind of thrown onto you, whether they're true for you or not. So if you don't learn to define exactly what that is, in some cases, it could work out in your favor, but in all cases, someone else will define it for you. And we want to keep the power and the ball in your court, if you will. Want to step into understanding the pillars of knowing what a credible personal brand is, in alignment and outside of who you were as an athlete. We want to dig into some storytelling frameworks used by top athletes and CEOs who may or may not be former athletes themselves. So this is going to be talking about more so if you're trying to position yourself on paper, if you're trying to position yourself in certain conversations, or even thinking about social media. So we'll talk about things like that. How to audit your brand identity, how to clearly communicate your value outside of athletics, and then maybe even how some of your experience as an athlete might transfer over, and then how to reposition yourself after the game is over, of course. So, awareness is about knowing yourself before you attempt to brand yourself without relying so heavily on your athletic accomplishments. So, we like to go about this at Athlete with questions, right? Because we don't like to say, hey, because of this, you are this. And as athletes, sometimes that does make sense to us, right? Like if you bench or squat this much, that puts you in this category. If you perform this way, or if you meet these metrics, then you play this position, or etc., right? But we like to go more introspective and more internal with this because this is something that has to be embodied more so from the inside than it is extrinsic performance. So the first question that we ask, and you can take notes and feel free to have a pen, pencil, or paper, or take notes on your phone as we go through this. But the first question is, what do you want to be known for? And I'll say it again. What do you want to be known for? And this could get tricky because if you've only thought of yourself as being known for throwing an amazing fastball or being able to hold your breath for a really long time, if you're a swimmer or a diver, or if you've been known for being really strong in the weight room, regardless of, what sport you've played, or just if you've been known for those extrinsic or external performance-based factors, this number one question could be a fun challenge, or it could be a very frustrating reality to ask yourself. Is like, what do I want to be known for? And when I transitioned out of athletics, something that I wanted to be known for was being the person who could bridge the gap. So when I graduated, I moved into the world of fitness, and I knew that as an athlete, fitness came a little natural to me, but I knew that I would be dealing with those individuals who had either never worked out in their life or never played sports in their life, or, you know, they may have never even been around anything physical outside of grade school, or maybe their children are into that stuff or whatever, right? So if I'm personal training and they know nothing about fitness, I just can't pull out whistles and start just writing stuff on the board and expect them to know exactly like what specific movement patterns and reps and set schemes and all that kind of stuff was. So outside of the details of fitness, I wanted to be known as somebody who really understood the disconnect and was able to bridge that gap. And then now moving through, wow, is funny to say, but I graduated at this time of this recording in 2025. I graduated college almost 15 years ago. That even throughout my professional development and journey, I've always been that person and that professional that was the person who could bridge the gap, the person who could kind of speak two different languages. Like I could understand the current regime and then also understand some of the new ways, new techniques, new strategies, new mentality as maybe someone else coming in or another group that was coming in. So we're thinking about different generations, we're thinking about different structures, we're thinking about the upgrade in technology. I mean, we're even thinking about as the most recent today, even like things like the pandemics like COVID, to where how do we really meet people where they are and how things shift and how things kind of move around. So through my coaching efforts, through my consulting efforts, through who I was in the fitness world, and then even now moving into athlete, I consider myself to be the person who's like, hey, like I understand both sides. I understand both sides very well, and I want to be able to help gel that and help bridge that gap. So that's my personal example. And mind you, I'm speaking on it now as if back in 2011, I knew that in the front of my brain. I had no idea what I wanted to be known for. Now, close to 15 years moving forward through this progression, I can speak to it very clearly. You may be able to speak to it very clearly right now, but if you can't, that is completely 100% normal. What I would encourage you to do is take this very first question and just start to write down words, start to write down keywords, if you will. So you can start with, I want to be confident. I want to be knowledgeable. I want to be wealthy. I want to be known for being firm, just whatever, right? So just start to write down those keywords and just build on that over time. And then those words will eventually turn into sentences and then will eventually turn into paragraphs. And then from there, you'll be able to really spell out exactly what you want to be known for. All right. So moving to our second question, what strengths define you? So you can think about things that you receive compliments on a regular basis. Like, people always say, "Oh, I'm really good at this," or people always give me compliments on this. And these things can very well be performance based, right? But if we pull back the layers of that external performance that you may receive compliments for, that you may know that you're good at or that you're strong at, what you want to then ask yourself is what personal characteristics fuel that external strength of mine? So, for example, let's say you're really good at a specific drill or skill, or maybe you're even really good at a specific exercise in the weight room, something like that, right? Just using um, sport analogies, if you will. Think about you learning that. And even if it came natural, like let's say you just, picked up that thing like right away, right? Think about as you mastered that and got even better at it, think about what it took for you mentally, you know, to continue to be great at that. Because if it's a strength, then we have to allude to the fact that it's consistent, right? And sometimes we miss that when something is a strength for us. Even if it became natural for you, if you're naturally strong in an area, that means that you've been consistent in that area over time to classify it as a strength. So start to think about what do you consistently do, or what consistent thoughts or what consistent behaviors are attached to that strength, right? So even if you don't see things as a strength and you see them as like natural, you don't put a lot of effort into it or something like that, there's something very consistent about how you show up in that keyword or that category or that thing that makes it strong for you. And then that can become one of your definitions. So own that as much as you can. Next question. What values guide your behavior? So, what are some things that you think about that empower you or fuel you to do the things that you've done as an athlete, as a son, as a daughter, as a brother, as a sister, as a friend, as a teammate? Like, what are some of those values that guide your behavior? Is it something that may be attached to a favorite quote, a favorite scripture, something that you learned from a coach over the years, something that you learned from a parent or a family member over those years, right? Like, what are some things and values that are your North Star as to your behavior? And you can also think of your behavior as some of your boundaries also, because in order for you to value something, there's a yes to your value and then there's a no, right? To your values as it relates to your behavior. Because if you value something, then there are certain behaviors that you will do and certain behaviors that you won't partake in. Like if you're someone who values impeccable health, right? Then you're gonna naturally say no to certain substances or certain activities that would jeopardize that value system, right? As it aligns with how you behave and the choices that you make. So take some time to think about what values guide your behavior. And then our last question here for pillar one for awareness is what story has shaped your identity? So this could be a story of excellence and achievement. This could be a story of heartache and pain. This could be a story of overcoming adversity. This could be a story of wanting to be the first generation person in your family to actually go to college or to be a student athlete or to remove yourself from a poor environment. It could be a story of being the middle child who you felt like you didn't get enough attention or something like that, right? But this story and whatever that story is, it's not positive or negative. It's only true or false. And what we're looking for is what's true and what's false to you, right? So, what's true in the story that has shaped who you've become? Because all of that aligns with everything that we've asked ourselves to this point. So, this is the final question within this and something that we really need to hone in on. So, take some time because awareness does form your foundation, right? And pillar one, as we talk about awareness and other spaces, pillar one is typically mindset, right? So, this pillar one with awareness for us here at Athlete, we want to ask these four questions right out the gate as you're transitioning. And we want to ask, what do you want to be known for? What strengths define you? What values guide your behavior? And what story has shaped your identity? So, as we move into pillar two, which is alignment, alignment is very crucial because we've all maybe experienced people who say one thing but don't really behave a certain way in relationship to what has been said or declared or has been verbalized. So your alignment is very important because your message and behavior must match for it to be considered true alignment. Now, you could be aligned to something from a message or from a communication standard as something you aspire to or desire to be, but it's not true alignment until it's actual reality, until it actually shows up in consistent behavior over a period of time. So your brand equals your perception, your alignment equals credibility. Okay, your alignment equals credibility. As we move into pillar two, we're talking about alignment. And alignment is very important because your message and your behavior, they have to match for it to make sense. And we've all may have been around people who have said one thing but behaved a completely different way based on what they verbalized or communicated. And it's very important that we make sure that our thoughts and our words also match and mirror how we show up and help amplify and fuel what we say is important to us, as that speaks to true alignment. So remember that our brand is our perception, right? Like maybe how we present, but what we're truly aligned to makes us credible to what we're saying, how we're behaving, as we're showing up in regards to what people may or may not experience, right? So brand could also be interchanged with experience. So if we think about our alignment and our brand slash experience, if you will, we want to make sure that we're providing something that's credible and that's true to not only what we communicate through words, but also what we communicate through our behavior. So one thing that we can consider as we're thinking about our brand in person and online as we move into how we show up in maybe social media spaces is your online identity or identity at large consistent with your values, the goals that you set for yourself, your true character inside, which is your desires and what you aspire to, what may be you're inspired by your true character, and also moving forward your professional aspirations. And a lot of times what happens is that we're so used to really only being critiqued or assessed or really valued and viewed as an athlete that sometimes how we show up in the regular world, if you will, or maybe even online, we haven't really put a lot of weight on it, right? Because it's like, okay, well, I can post this online, or I got, I'm showing up like this, or just wearing this, or saying this, or just whatever. And people may be kind of turning a blind eye to it for years because, you're the athlete. But now you're moving into a space where people are anticipating that they have to trust you with a budget, or they have to trust you with company values. They have to trust you in a teamwork environment that isn't predicated on external validating factors like an athletic performance or weight room numbers or how quick or how fast you can do something from a physicality perspective. But now they're really trusting the things that we just mentioned, which are your values, your goals, and your character, right? As it relates to our bottom line, which would be your personal and professional aspirations, but professional aspirations in regards to your alignment moving forward into your next space of performance, because now you as a professional will be your new performance metric to the outside world. Before, your performance metric to the outside world was your athletic prestige. Now it's going to be how you can show up and really have and hold that value as a professional. And if you haven't thought about it thus far or prior to, today is your official reset and your official window of opportunity to begin to make those moves. So, as we move into pillar three, which is our authority pillar, and many of us may not even really have considered this to even be an option, especially if you or I or we didn't hold like a leadership position on our sports team, or again, we were not like the captain of the team or anything like that. So, how we have to think about authority now as we move into this new journey of our lives is that authority is how we turn our experience into expertise. So, when we think about authority, authority comes from your journey, your wins, your failures, your lessons, your voice, and your leadership style. And your leadership style doesn't always have to be from the front because people trust proof, not perfection. So you showing up authentically as who you are based on these things that we just listed is going to be the most influential thing that you can do, not only as a former athlete, but also moving forward as a person, intrinsically and extrinsically, but in your professional spaces as well, because people will say or think to themselves, even if they don't think it in the front of their minds, they'll feel it and they'll understand and experience the energy of like, hey, this person used to be, this, that, and third as an athlete, but man, they've really been able to turn the corner and make a positive pivot into really becoming this new thing for themselves without disregarding or forgetting, who they were and where they've been along their journey, and having those wins and failures to really develop into lessons to curate their voice. And now they're showing up proud, as it relates to your leadership style. Now they're showing up proud in this space, even if their leadership style or leadership position isn't manager, director, supervisor, anything like that. You're leading in a way that has made you the authority in your own space because you've turned your experience into expertise and something that you've mastered for yourself. First framework, framework number one is addressing the then, the shift, and the now. So our then is who you used to be, right? So if we're referring to who we were as athletes, that's who we used to be, right? If we're thinking about the shift is the moment that changed your direction. So it could have been you graduated from either high school or college. It could have been you didn't receive the offers or the opportunities that you thought you might to continue your athletic career. It may have been from an injury. It may have been from you making the decision that, you know what? I'm just not in love with the sport or the lifestyle anymore in the way that I used to continue to go. It could have just been a personal choice. But the shift is that moment that it happened. And then the now is who you've become. And for many of us watching this now and engaging in the workshop here is who you are becoming. And for the most part, who you will continue to become because every season brings a new layer, it brings new discoveries and new things to explore. So the now is an ever-going journey. It never really ends. So who you've become and then who you are becoming now. So remember, it's the then shift now, then shift now is our first framework. Framework two is going to be our challenge, our choice, and then how we champion that. So, our challenge is, of course, the obstacle. Like, what obstacles maybe have you faced? What choices did you make in regards to that obstacle? Like, how did you choose to say, hey, here's what I'm going to do to overcome that obstacle? And then three is, how did you champion that experience? So, how did you take or how did you develop the skill or the lesson that you gained through the choices that you made to overcome that challenge? So you can really read this any way that you want. So if you go challenge, choice, champion, that can be the proactive approach. If you go champion, choice, challenge, that can be the reverse engineering approach to how you face challenges. So you can use either one of these frameworks to be able to explain yourself better in conversation, talk through a concept or a theory if you're in a presentation or interview space, because this framework and the previous framework are both used to build credibility. Your personal brand statement, you can use this to complete, blah, blah, blah. Refresh, refresh, refresh. Your personal brand statement, if you use it as a sentence, is I help blank by blank so they can blank. And you can use this as an elevator pitch. You can use this for social media. If you're in a space on social media where you're trying to gain attention for clients or to be able to promote a product that you currently have or that you will have. So if you want to take a screenshot or save this sentence so you can use it as a bio or use it as an elevator pitch, please feel free to do so. Final takeaway today is that your personal brand isn't something you create, it's something that you own, continue to always refine and live. You have to live it because you have to feel it so that you can have those wins and some of those failures to turn into lessons, continue to refine it and continue to own it. So again, another way to think of it proactively as own, refine, live, and then also you can reverse engineer this process for self-audit or self-awareness to know that, hey, I've been living this way. I need to refine these things so that I can continue to own it, right? And your discipline in these situations to maintain this mentality, to understand these frameworks for yourself will be to your advantage, okay? This discipline that you have in this journey that you're walking will be to your advantage, okay? Because your story is your power, your voice is your brand, whether you're in the gym moving forward, whether you're with your family, whether you're trying to build yourself professionally, your voice is your brand. Your story is your power. Your discipline is your advantage. Thank you all for joining me today. And what I hope wasn't too cumbersome of a task in taking notes and exploring yourself during this workshop. But thank you for joining me today and Brand Like a Pro, owning your narrative after the game. Your personal brand is your new uniform. And the great part about it is that this uniform, it never goes away. Okay. You can only update it. You can only get a new look. You can only upgrade the threads and clean it off and put it back on. But your personal brand is now your new uniform, not only for a season, not only for a contract, but for the rest of your life. Thank you. My name is Jonathan B. Williams. I appreciate you. I love you all. See you soon.